my friend. Today we're going to talk about dynamics. Now, I'm going to play the guitar, maybe a little piano, ukulele. If you have your instrument, play along, ask questions. Just want to be able to talk about what dynamics are and how to actually adjust for them. There are many different types of dynamics and many different types of ways we use them. But one of the most intriguing ways that we use them is by using them with articulating how we feel and what we're playing. Now, there always is going to be a base amount of theory that goes on with this channel, and I do hope you're at the point with your instrument that you understand there's something called a scale or a diatonic sequence onto which we put all of the notes of a said key. So if it's in the key of G, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. There are multitudes of ways to play these 7-note strings, and when we learn them, we kind of learn them as families of 7 notes, and we go through C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, G, A, B, C, D, E. It builds muscle memory. After that point, we try to dissect where those notes are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 is being intervals. So a 1 to a 4 gives us the feel of playing like a C major to an F major. Having that ingrained inside of your brain is wonderful, and I would also tell anybody who wants to learn how to play an instrument, no matter what it is, or to sing, to learn something called the circle fifths. It takes us through a journey of chords which work well back to back, and then exhibit a way to start practicing and seeing keys as being relative to each other or not relative. And the only thing that that really means is that the notes that you're playing either fit well together as consonances where they feel like nice and stable, or they build a lot of tension. That's the whole point of music, really. Dynamics is what we're going to be talking about today, and dynamics allow us to express ourselves. There's the culprit, that B. They allow us to express ourselves while soloing or playing rhythm, or even comping, doing vamping and waiting. A lot of music is just listening, so if I was playing something in like an A minor and there was a guitar player that was playing over the top of me, you know, playing pentatonics, going to relative minors, C major, doing solos, blues or not, using different types of modes, I would keep something like if I'm not big on these 5 chords, doing the A minor, just going down a half step, I might give it a little different feel. So the notes themselves are working with the chord, like a G sharp augmented or an E dominant 7, but you don't need to know these chords to be able to utilize the function of the tone. So one of the ways we like to articulate that is to do dynamics which range from piano to pianissimo to pianissimo, where you can barely hear it, and then vaguely audible. I usually use this marking when I'm doing like a palm mute and doing like a harmonic. That allows me the ability to get a little louder with it and play it a little opener, as an open string rather than palm muting it, which gives it more volume. So on the other end of that, after we do pianissimo, piano, we have mezzo piano, which is a little bit louder than just piano. And then we would go to like our forte. Our forte would be loud. That's what forte means. When we say mezzo forte, it would be medium loud, which is just a little bit louder. When you see double F, you have fortissimo, which is like full-on strumming, and then fortissimo would be the loudest that you could play by strumming on any instrument, whether you're playing individual notes or you're playing a full chord structure as a triad or a dyad. So a little bit of music theory on how to practice these dynamics. When practicing scales, if you can go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, well, that wasn't C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. A great way to articulate yourself is to also listen to intervals. So the test for you this week, if you're following along doing this weekly, play the C but hum the E. And if you're not a hummer, this is actually interesting because after doing these for 5 minutes a day for a week or a month or a year, you will begin to start have better pitch, tonality, intonation, and relative understanding of how notes fit together, because you'll hear the variances in the different notes you're singing along with. So here we go. We're gonna sing the third, but we're gonna play the one. What we've done is we've taken each dyad and we've worked that up and we've played it as the 1 and 3, but we're playing the scale with our fingies and then we're singing it with our mouth. This allows us to hear intervals. Now, let's try it with dynamics. Going from piano to forte, and then you do it the other way. You can sing fourths, you can sing fifths, which sound pleasing because they're consonants. And then when you really want to get wicked and wild with your dynamic skills, try and do something like an augmented note. So if you played a 1, if we were playing a C augmented, I'm hearing the flat 5. So if I had you would be hearing the variance of the 5th on each one of those. I would suggest try doing that and playing and singing your root then. If you went from forte to piano and then you sang your 1 but played your 3, you'll start to hear the variances in the notes that you're playing and be more in tune with your instrument. Doesn't matter what instrument you're on or what you're playing there. If you're playing chord structures, here's a great way that we can see how to practice those chords. Now chords, they're only divisions of those dyads that we were talking about. A major chord is a major third plus a minor third. Now these are stacking of our half steps. So we're talking about the distances between notes that are pleasing and displeasing, or they hold suspension, or they move to another chord. That's the whole point of seeing 7 notes, and your 1 chord goes away from the root or the tonic, finds its way generally to the 4 or the 5, the subdominant or the dominant, does some magic melody, uses maybe one of the minors, 2 or 3, or the natural minor found inside the key. It's called the natural minor. It has the same key signature as the root. So essentially when playing with triads and the notes we use for melodies, there's not too many variances, but we seem to make it work with new and interesting things. The way that we use dynamics for articulation helps to see things as being short notes or helps to see things as being long notes. The 2 different variances are called staccato and legato. Let's go over the board and mark some stuff out so you know what they look like. Aloha. So when we're doing some dynamics, what we're trying to do is we're trying to see that the notes that we're choosing can have some sort of feeling or articulation. The articulation that we're trying to choose and put over the top of this today would be something along the lines of choosing any note and knowing what it looks like and how to express it. So if we're just doing a G right here, right? We've got this half note just hanging out, doing a whole bunch of something. And if we put a dot over the top of it, that means to have that note shortened. Now, a half note doesn't really have that same variance, but you definitely could see how you could have a dot over a half note, quarter note, eighth note, any of these. They're going to make the value of that just drop immediately. You play it, but it's almost like shortening the tone rather than just giving it a full 1 beat. You let it do its due course. Now, another way to see this is the legato. Whenever we have 2 measures and you have 1 note at the end like this, if this was in 4/4, this would only have a beat, which means we're missing 3 other beats. This is called an anacruxis or a pickup. If I wanted to go to the same note right here, I would put one of these. Or you could do it either way. You could do it underneath or above. Either way, this is called a legato marking. When you go from one note to the same note, meaning the G line to the G line, it's called a tie. And when you go to a different note, it's called a slur. Now, these are pretty cool. We're going to try and pick an example of a music that has a little bit of note here. Follow along and see if you enjoy. Nailed it. So all of those notes being sung, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star there, are all tied together. The note never stopped. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. If you're writing in just quarter notes, quarter, 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 half note, quarter, 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 half note, you can tie each one of those quarters that's at the end that we were playing staccato to a legato note. So the last one in your measure would basically have your legato marking going over. Now, if you were to go to a different note, that tie changes to the slur. So same note would be like a G to a G. No matter what the duration of the note is, it would be the same pitch or intonation. When going from another, like let's say a D, and then going to a F sharp, so we're going to our third there. If you're going up in form a major third, you'd be doing a movement which takes us from one line to another. But that's fine, because what happens is we're seeing this as being our F. It's on the bottom space of the treble clef there. And then we know that when we move up in tone that it's moving from one note to another. Well, that is just defined as a slur. Sometimes you will have a little SLR here, but generally you will know that legato marking by form. So another really cool thing that we can go over is why we use those markings. So what we were showing with how to practice a scale and sing it one way going up and sing it another way going down, I think I'm just going to run it up over here, throw those terms down. When we have our markings like piano, the way that we view that is with a P, but let's see how we can move through this structure and see what those look like as far as the dynamic markings you will encompass while sight reading any music. Now, these dynamics are for loudness. So when we're doing P, 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 we've got a quiet kind of marking that we know is very, very soft. It just means we're getting a little bit louder on each one of these. So very soft, soft, not quiet, you know what I mean? And then medium soft, it slowly gets a little louder. After we go from our medium soft, we've got our PP, pianissimo, piano. After here we have our MP as we were talking about. Now, MP, it relatively stands for mezzo, middle, piano, a little soft, not too bad. Piano is the marking for soft. The name of the instrument we play is the name. And then when we do something along the lines of very soft, the way that we spell this is kind of fun. It's like pianissimo. 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 So when we do this, that one's a little bit quieter. And then our quietest is the pianissimo. You are quite literally taking the I-S-I-I-I-S-I-I-issimo. Boom. Boom, 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 boom. So when we do that, we've got all of our markings for our quiets. Then we're kind of moving into our next branch. And our next branch is going to have a little bit more sound to it. So right after our medium soft, we're going to the mezzo piano. Mezzo piano then would go to our mezzo forte, which means medium loud. And this is right before we get loud. Mezzo forte. And I do believe there's a little Okina. When we go to the MF, we're going to go right here to the F. This is our forte. You will notice it on your music as being a little F, which means just to get loud. Mezzo. No, not mezzo. I do apologize. Forte. Groovy. After that, we're going to have another marking, which means just very loud. Cool. So F, F. Very loud. And then after that, we would have very, very loud. F, F, F. So if you have never seen these markings, this is what they mean. This is how we look at the music and go from having something like da 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 da. By getting louder and not getting faster, it adds more depth and meaning to the notes you're playing. Very, very loud. This one, fortissimo, Tissimo, fortissimo, and fortissimo. I love these words. Fortissimo is very, very loud, and then we have just. There has to be a way to have louder than loud. Now, when you're playing in an ensemble or orchestrated with a symphony or whatnot, each different section is going to be a lot louder than other sections. Like the brass section is going to be a lot louder than our violin section, unless you have 50 violins and 2 trumpets. So the idea is we have different markings for different places. If you need to see this in real action, the reason why I chose Twinkle Twinkle Don't Get a Copyright Infringement, if I do like something like the 1812 Overture, Tchaikovsky, and you go to the last 20 minutes, the last 20 measures, well, the whole song's great. You should watch it. But in the last 20 measures, it's the full wind down where the cannons have already exploded. It's doing the da 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 dum 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 dum. Then they split. Bum 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 dum 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 dum. The main theme motif. Different layers of that are supposed to express meaning. Well, dynamics are all over the place in that piece of music. The next part that we're going to after the fortissimo is to put a forte, and then we're putting a P. Now, you would be blown away, but this means that forte is suddenly followed by piano. What this means, it means to be loud and then get soft or quieter. And when we say loudness, loudness is generally determined by how hard you play something with the plectrum or how much air is being pushed through a fuselage, either your voice or a mouthpiece, saxophone, clarinet, woodwinds. They use an open hole to generate sound by going through a fuselage. So what happens when we get these, it's fortissimo, forte piano. And when we do the next one, the forte piano, there is also a way that we could call this the other ones. If you wanted to, an extended way to do this would be MFP. Does that make sense? Mezzo forte piano. It means you would just be mezzo forte and then get piano very quick. So it would be like doing something like this. If I started off on... Hear how it was like had a medium? Loud. So that would be kind of getting a little bit louder and then getting quiet immediately. It's a sudden movement. Right after that, we're going to have one of my favorites. We could call this one the Sforzando. It's generally represented as being an SFZ. I've got the worst pen here. I think I'm going to need to change it out. And I wish that I knew how to do a little bit more art, because when it's drawn on the paper, it looks so cool. The F kind of is a little bit bigger than the S and Z, but you will definitely remember the Sforzando because of its spelling. S-F-O-R, Sforzando. And honestly, Ryan Barnstead, if you're out there anywhere, I heard that at once upon a time you worked for RCA. How very cool. I miss you, buddy. It's been a long time since high school. Shout out to you, Ryan Barnstead. Zorando! All right, so, or Zabo is what we used to call him. Forceful, it's very sudden. So it's forceful, and it brings a lot of change. Forceful. So, sudden. So an example of this would be if you were hearing somebody being like, "Oh, I've got it too. Here, I'll just go show it. Why not?" This one's called. What is this one called? It's called probably Swell. It has this. Starts in like a mezzo piano. Then it gets a little louder here. Then it goes back to that piano and this lyrics. You're all gonna be swell, don't you worry what the hell. We're all gonna do what needs to be done. So that's the first part. It's kind of quiet with the lyrics in the beginning. It goes through the A part. We're all gonna see the rising sun. It goes through that action one more time. It gets a little louder. Then the second verse has a very, very sudden burst of energy with the lyrics. This is what he's stressando. We're all gonna be swell, don't you worry what the hell. You hear how it went up high? The whole emotion of the song is to have this kind of laid back, lackadaisical. The song's kind of depressing, but that we're all gonna be fine. It also has a line called we're all gonna die, which is kind of dramatic to say out loud or to sing that loud. So it's a sudden impact of words that allow us to take one idea. Hey, Hummingwood! Talking about dynamics today. That was just a little piece of music that I've been doing. It has a soffrando. Say it out loud with me. Soffrando. So very cool. All right, and then our next one that we want to try here is right after our soffrando. This means we're going to have a forceful but not as sudden as the soffrando. The way we mark it is an FZ, and the reason why is very close to the forte piano. This is suddenly loud, then gets soft. Well, this is to suddenly get loud, but you keep that up and you only put it in as inflection. So if you ever see an SFZ, it's forceful and sudden and backs off. And then if you see a forceful but not as sudden as this one, it just gradually gets louder. So if I, instead of going, we're all gonna die, if I was like, we're all gonna die, and we moved up to that higher note, that would be the FZ. And that is forceful, but not sudden. Down. And this one, of course, is the same thing as here. This would be forzando, but we don't have the suddenness of it. So that is a great way to see our dynamics. This effectively is how you would hear any music. So if you're listening to heavy metal and they're like, and then the drums just play and the whole band drops out and the singer's like, yeah! There would be dynamic markings over the top of everything that every individual is doing for every single note. And I know it seems overwhelming in the beginning, but one of the really, really cool things is starting to actually layer these out. And when you write music and you see it in a program, rather than just having like the beats or the timing of it, we actually have a lot of inflection that's done with these characters. So it goes without saying, we're going to have to talk about some sort of beats per minute because BPM is the tempo unto which we play these individual note structures. Hopefully I could get a lot of this on here. Articulation. The word articulate means to specifically play notes how they are performed or intended to be informed as written by the arranger and or the composer. What does this mean? When you're playing something that has an articulation, it's in terms of the duration or how much gravity you give each note. What is gravity? That's how you stress the note. So if we were like, lonely is the night when you're all alone. The certain bending of the notes that Robert Plant does or John Anderson. Short distance, how can the wind with its arms around me? That high note, been lost in the city. Woo, gee golly whiz. And that guy hits it with full voice. Unbelievably awesome. The idea behind that is these have markings and they need to be articulated or stressed the way that the band tried to do it. So when trying to articulate your own music, You are listening to other musicians, and if you have the vocabulary like this to understand what they're doing, you then have a better chance of starting to add this to your own music. Yeah. I mean, I can read sheet music slowly, but more importantly, I can write music, which is, it was my goal in life to be able to take what was inside my head and get it out and be able to articulate it. Exactly what we're talking about right now. So, like, in my own music, I know everybody else can't hear it, but when I hear something that I'm playing, I also hear the full band because I play all the other instruments. And if I don't play the instruments, I've been around them or I've done enough musical analysis or critiquing or studying of every single song and every single band and every single situation that I've ever had in my life. Therefore, long story short is, I think, eat, breathe, dream music. When I'm not doing music, I'm just trying to get by in life. Other than that, everything is music for me. So my world is constantly being divided and viewed through the eyes of music. As far as the alphabetic tones, if it's necessary to have it in 2025, to be able to play music, no, because there are enough resources out there now that it's not mystical. When I was a boy, 14, 15, there was no internet. You'd be lucky if you got a guitar that had all the strings on it. And the first time that I put my hands on an instrument, it didn't make sense. The second time was 15 years later when a buddy put one in my hands when we were 15 or 16 and showed me how to play a D minor 7, and I laughed. I was like, when am I ever going to need this? So it shows the hubris and the naivety of somebody that didn't know that music was their thing. Took a couple years and learned, and what I learned in a period of 2 or 3 years usually would take the span of a decade. And the people that I learned from didn't make it seem like it was anything hard. It was just something we did together. Lo and behold, after I wasn't playing music with those individuals, I found that the people that I played with did not know how to read music, didn't know how to read charts, and it was always 3 or 4 chord kind of jams or situations. So the music that I listened to and played was different than my surrounding. What that meant was I had to change the group and the musicians onto which I was with. I got into jazz, bossa nova, stuff like that, that opened up a complete door of understanding music tonality, modality, and how to utilize different aspects of analyzation as well as being able to play. So would I say, is it necessary in 2025 to be able to know how to play do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do? Nah. If you're going to write music or you want to teach, yes, because it is by far the foundation of all music. Dare I say the foundation of all constructs of our material world. That might be pushing a little bit too far. I might not know enough about my reality to know about science, but from what I've heard and read, everything vibrates. That sounds like music to me. So what I should show you or are on the save with the alphabetic notes. I would say that being able to read the sheet music is a great idea. If you don't know of something called the Landmark series, I would check that out. It allows us to do a couple different things. When we have 2 staves like this, now I've already done a video which covers this, but if you have 2 staves like this, they're just individual places to put notes. When we put a bar on one side, it turns it into a measure into which the notes go into, and then we're able to count these durations, which is kind of what we're talking about with dynamics. Usually in music, we'll have 2 different clefs. This one's called the G clef, and it starts because this is the G line, and then the bar follows through to the bass clef. This connects the two, making the 2 staffs or staves the grand staff, meaning you could start reading lower end notes and you can start reading higher end notes. If we do this, they're bracketed together, and most music has ideas where 4 measures has the theme. Ta-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, ha-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then down here, the next 4 measures would be the answer to that. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, ha-da-da-da-da-da-da. By doing music analysis, you will see that there are only so many forms of cadences onto which you would use the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the best way to answer this question is, if I had a G note, an A note, a B note, a C note, a D note, an E note, and an F note, and I did not see, actually that would be weird to have those. 2 measures, yeah. And I did not see that there was going to be a sharp here, I would look at this F note right here and I would be like, that's an F natural, would be in the key of C. Well, when I look at this, I see that we're in the key of G because there's 1 sharp. So for me, it's vitally important to know how to do my circle. This is just on auto response, but after drawing this out 40, 50, 80, 2,000 times, I start to see this in my dreams. And now I can see the circle as being something to find relative chords, find chords that are not relative, and then see which chords have enharmonic spellings, like all of these do. A flat, G sharp, D sharp, E flat. I could go over here and do E double flat, that's a D. Right here, if we do a F flat, that's a E. If we kept going with our circle of force, C, D, E, F, it would be an F flat. F, G, A, B. Well, yeah, B double flat is A. So the circle and the notes that we use on our staves, sight reading, at a certain level, if you're reading something like we played earlier, and we've got G, B, or how about this? We do G, F, E, G, F, E, A, G, F. We'd be playing da 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 da. Now that allows us just to practice these. You could play those three notes in order, and you have an acting motif. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, G, G, A, B, B, A. So reading at a very small level, don't worry about it. It's like when you're doing math. It's like eventually you will know that 12 plus 12, right, is going to equal 24. And if it ever equals 26 or it equals 23, something's off. Well, same thing with music. When you start seeing the notes that you're playing on any instrument as being stackable, which makes a chord, or being linear, which goes in this order, that creates melody or tempo. I hope that's a great explanation. In fact, that does fit along with what we're talking about today. When we use tonality from the circle of fifths, and we're able to incorporate this in our practice style, it starts to come out in our playing no matter what instrument. And I would always urge anybody who's playing any instrument to sing along with their instrument. If your voice is your instrument, have a metronome or some sort of source where you can hold a note to have comparison analysis. What does that mean? If you've got a piano nearby, or if no piano, if funds are kind of tight like they are with me, buy yourself one of those chromatic tuners. They're a couple bucks. Save up for it. I think $4. And if you could support a local music store, that would be totally awesome wherever you are. So as far as like going through here, articulations are used by doing different stresses. Now, staccato, if we were going to be using this, would have a little bit of inflection. That has this marking, and it's filled in. You'll generally see it like this. If this is above a note, so if we're playing our notes right here I'll even put a line, why not? Not the straightest of lines, eh? If we had, let's say a B. If we put this above the top of it, it means to extremely shorten the duration. So a quarter note is worth one beat in a measure of 4/4. So if we had just this single, it would feel like a staccato, but it is shorter, believe it or not, than a staccato. Now, a staccato means short and attached. So when we're playing the staccato, we are absolutely meaning being shorter than short. Absolutely. Staccato? Yes. Oh, that's CC. S-T-A-C-C-A-T-I-S-S, right? T-I-S-S-I-M-O. Staccato. And then when we go with our next one, let's do, how about an A note? There we go. And after this, absolutely, we have something called a staccato. Now, a staccato marking, as we aforementioned over here when we're starting, it has a single dot. That single dot allows us to see staccato. Staccato. Staccato means short and attached, not as short as a staccatissimo. You see what we're doing here? Over here, we would add something and we do issimo. Very, 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 very much. When we're going, also, hummingwood. Was that an okay explanation on why you should just start the process of learning a couple notes? Even if it's just knowing your C major, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. When you put those 7 notes down, you could then see how going 1, 3, 5, I don't know, you've been watching the channel for a little minute. If I do this, that means how to build a triad. C, skip the D, hit the E, skip the F, hit the G. Move that over, you've got the D minor, then the E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished. And I don't really have time to go into this because we're not talking about tonality and like how the circle works, but C and A are relative major and minor. D minor and F major are relative major minor. E minor and G major are relative major minor. And when you make this 5 chord into a 5 dominant, it sounds like the diminished. So there really aren't anything special about any individual note. It's how you pair them up dynamically using dyads or triads to express yourself. When a melody fits over the top, dynamics are really where they help those notes to shine. Or else they're all just major chords and they're all boring. La 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 la. So, next one we have in the list. Also, if you're noticing the bar here, whenever you see a double beam, that means you are changing time signature or key signature. I use that to separate concepts as well on examples like this. So if you're looking at it, that's what these mean. The next one we're going to have here is going to be called a tenuto. The tenuto is kind of cool. How about a G? And we'll do it, this G as an 8th note. Nice. The tenuto has a bar or a beam over the top. Just a single thing, and it's spelled T-E-N-U-T-O. Tenuto. When you have the tenuto, means it has actually 2 functions as it stands. It can mean either a full duration, so when you're writing notes or tones and there are a bunch of staccato notes, like you have dot, 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 dot above all these 8th notes, and the last 8th note that's inside of that bracket can have a tenuto. It marks so you would have like tut, 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 tut. Like that tut is an 8th note still, but it's not detached like the other 8th notes. Tut, 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 tut. Because a whole note would be tut, or I mean a quarter note, tut. So tut is still an 8th note, but tut, 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 tut. See how this all relates to the sound variation? Could be tut, 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 or tut, 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 tut. These are all variations of tone and dynamic that you could actually make up really cool melodies with. Let's keep traversing our articulation motifs. The second function of a duration can mean you could slightly stress a note. Now, this kind of marking is used a lot in Hawaiian music because over the top of the lyrics, oh, groovy, thank you. Over the top of most things, if you had like a hele ana to go, hele ana, if you wanted to sing a hele and have this being a long, 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 you take that tenuto and do that. A hele, where it holds it out. You could also put the tenuto over that in the language. What happens is it holds out the word. If you're doing it in anything and you're singing a word, let's say the word is, how about seaside? And you're going, here, let me make him a melody. The water came down off the mountain and flowed to the seaside. If I wanted this to be C, I could hold out that note in the measure and I could parallel on the word. So if this was my measure right here, I would have the word right below it and then I would put that above it in the word so I know that that note is referring to that. I hope that's a good enough way to explain the 2 functionalities of the tenuto. It either is to stress the duration in full or to slightly stress it so it sticks out and has a little bit more emphasis. The next thing we're going to do is called an emphasis. Or as my wife says, to put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. If we do this, the accent purely means to stress or emphasize more than a tenuto. So rather than just having just that like long out drawn expression here, how about we pick another note? Let's pick an well, these are moving in step. Let's move up in step, but let's make it a sharp. We're going to go to A. We're going to put our up. And we're going to be putting right here. When you're writing music or notes and articulation, anytime you write on the staff, you write the accidental, which would be a sharp, a double sharp, a natural, a flat, or a double flat. Those 5 states of being. You could talk about triple flats, but that's crazy. When you use those states of being, when we are talking about a note, we would say F sharp. But when we're looking at what the note is on the line, like let's say the top line of the treble clef, we would put the accidental in front of the note, allowing us to view what that note is before it is. It's kind of like language. Some languages use the verb and the noun in different places. Just like the Hawaiian we're doing. The verb, when you're talking about something or to something, the verb is used first so you know exactly what's going on. What's the action that we're doing there? All right. This one was called the accent, A-C-C-E-N-T, and the accent is going to be used by putting what we would consider a greater than or a less than sign. I can't remember which one's which at this point. I don't remember. It's been too long since I've done math. All right, let's see here. And then lastly, one of the coolest expressions that we could have that goes a little bit further is called a marcato. Now, you don't have to roll those R's. M-A-R-C-A-T-O. M-A-R-C-A-T-O. I don't know. I don't think my spelling is getting any better as a result of writing more. Now, this one, let's put it on the D. And another quick observation that I would like us to see here is when we have a note that is above the middle line on a stave, the line would go up. When it's below the middle line, I'm sorry, that is incorrect. When it's above the middle line, the stem goes down. When it's below the middle line, it goes up. Now, the note in question that we're doing is this. We are absolutely just rotating it. We're not just taking the stem and putting it on the other side. The idea is we are flipping it around so you see that the same note is being utilized throughout the whole stave. This works for every piece of music, no matter what Western notation you're looking at. The concept behind this is you want to be able to leave space for something like a dot. In music, when you have a note duration, you can hold out a note, and we're going to talk about that just a minute because that works with BPM and stuff. But the marcato itself has a little crown, almost like we would, I think it's called a caret in music. If anybody's in the comment section right now, and you can check my keyboard nonsense, I'm pretty sure that's called a caret. So yeah, I have no clue what this is called. I've just always seen it as like a triangle that's pointy. And honestly, I've only really seen this with articulations on a music writing program. I don't even know if it's on the keyboard or on the computers. I have a Mac, if anybody knows this one. Yeah, I don't see it. Anywho, yeah, these are them. Those are these. These are those. Them right there. Them's it. So all these are the ones we use for our articulation. Again, when we go through this, staccato means super short and detached, very super short and detached. Short and detached, hold out for full duration or slightly give it an emphasis. This means to absolutely give it an emphasis. The whole point of it is to accent it and have it. And then a marcato. Whenever we're reading percussion lines, you might see something like this on the drums. When we have the top line or something slightly above it, maybe like this, you'd have a crash. So you would absolutely see something like that as a marcato if you're doing here, we would know that that's on the and. So I would be thinking 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and. This right here, when I put that up, makes me think I'm going to be doing a hemiola. And those of you out there who have drumsticks and you don't know what a hemiola is, it's when you take the ride cymbal and you play one of the beats and then the eighth note, or in the 16-note structure of the eighth notes, you ride the bell. So you'd have a cymbal, bell, cymbal, bell, cymbal, bell, and it gives you this really cool offbeat. Ding, 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 ding. All right. These are those. These are them. I'll leave that up for a second in case anybody's taking notes. Let's see here. Cool. What we discussed over there as far as like our notes and our notation for having legato notes and slurs, you absolutely can have a note like this that has a longer duration, goes over to another note through a beam, touches another note, and then you can have an articulation on there. So if we had a dotted half note's worth 2 beats. Anytime you see a dot, you take half of the intended value. Split 2 in half, you get 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. That means a dotted half note, 3 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Quarter note is worth a beat, but we're splitting a measure. If I was in a measure of 3, 4, and we only had 3 beats per measure, we would have a complete measure. 1, 2, 3, 1. That means that whatever I'm doing here on this next measure, I am not playing that beat. It might have this, and then an eighth note rest, and then it might have another eighth note in here. That would make it feel as we would have a beat taken, there would be 2 beats left, an eighth note and an eighth note is 1 beat from there, and then we have 1 remaining beat. Which means if I was writing, I would want to know that I've got 1, 2, 3, 1, rest, rest. Then we have our clap, and then we have a rest for our last beat. When seeing music notation written out, it is a pain in the butt when you don't know what the characters mean. So start slow, start easy. That might have been a little overwhelming for that piece, but right now what I want to do is show you the note values and why they work. Those are articulations. The two different ones that we were just talking about that work quite well, which are our most important ones, are called legato and staccato. One means long verse short. I see what I did there? Long verse short. That's essentially what these are. The two different forms of this one is the tie. The other one is the slur. Remember, tie, same note. Slur, different notes. All right, the next thing we would want to talk about is the phrasing on those. And honestly, it talks about just going through these and holding them out. The next type of note that we could actually have run a little bit further is called a fermata. I always had a teacher, I think the teacher was in college, that used to say it looks like a little bird's eye. So that's kind of what I kept. You put a dot and then a cove over the top of it, or a semicircle, a half of an ellipse, something like that. This is called a fermata. A fermata is something that indicates a stop in music, and then it holds the note until the player or the conductor wants to continue. So in a piece of music, if you find that you're like, I don't know, let me give you an example. Bang, dong, dong, dong. Better in tune. So if we're doing something like wish that I was on a rocket top down in Tennessee hills, ain't no smoky smoke on rocket top, ain't no telephone bills. At the end of the tune it has this Rocket Top Tennessee. And then you can do a quick outro. The idea for that tenuto, if we have this one, there needs to be something that emphasizes a note longer than just a brief period or accents it. That's what a fermata is. So at the end of a song, if you ever see a singer going, holding out the grand finale, that's what a fermata of essence is. When we move through our fermata, here, let me write it up here so we remember. We put it directly over the top of a note, and it would look like that. Here, let's throw a good E out here. Let's make this E a 16th note, which means 16th notes will have two flags. Wunderbar. Whenever you start a measure, put double bubble bar. Here we go, double beam. The next one we're going to be talking about here, after our fermata, is going to be called a breath mark. Now, there are a couple different types of fermatas, and a breath mark is the absence of singing a note, so it makes sense that when we do the fermata, you would see what a short fermata. If you want to have a fermata that's not, Rocket Top Tennessee, I mean, that could be as long as you want, a minute long if you could hold that note. A short fermata would be like, see, yeah. It holds the note out, but sometimes it's longer than a whole note. A whole note would be 4 beats. So are you giving a little bit of an expression, breaking the tempo, breaking the measures? Absolutely. That's what the fermatas are here for. Fermata always sounds like stigmata to me. That's how I remember it. It's a very short point. Not going to write stigmata though. Short fermata. And again, over the top of a note. How about the top line of the treble clef? And this time we're going to do an F, and we're going to just make it in a quarter note. Ta-da. And usually with our stem, when we go down, you want to go down past another line just a little bit right through the middle. You'll get the feeling of how to draw notes when you've drawn it over 1,000. I'm still probably in my 20,000 mark of drawing notes. when you use music writing programs, and then you use music that trying to write the stuff out and memorize it, or making a music notebook, you do get better at it. Practice for 5 minutes every day. I swear it is. Hey Jeff, how you doing, buddy? I haven't seen you in a while. I hope your day is pleasing. Aloha. Talking about dynamics today, for those of us who don't know what these characters mean, it's just opening up some doorways. This one looks like our marcato, but it has a dot in the middle of it. That's how I remember it. And I don't know if I'm doing this justice. There it is. Should look a little bit better. After that, we would have a long fermata. So this fermata, as long as you want. It's up to the conductor, because the conductor is going to have something like having the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4 is how 4/4 goes. 3 would be up, over, down, up, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. If you're doing 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Just do it double or slower. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. You're gonna figure it out from the conductor. But if a conductor goes and holds up, does a little shaky hand, that's like vibrato. Conductor holds the note, that's you just hold the duration. That note, if we were doing, let's say, the C note right here, we'll do the C as a dotted half note. Why not? And then this one is the long fermata. I actually don't even know what the name of that character is, but it is on the keyboard. I have seen it somewhere. Not the best at computers. Again, if anybody knows what this symbol called and this symbol's called, if it's found on there, that'd be amazing. I'd love to put vocabulary to those actual symbols. All right, so this is our long fermata. Again, fermata just holds the notes out. Very cool, fermata. And then as we were talking about, the breath mark is super important, because the breath mark is like a comma. Or, and fine, we have our okina. If I remember correctly, it looks like this. It's like a dot with a little curve. It's the same thing you would use in a semicolon, I believe, near the bar. So this little thing is put in between stuff. So if you're doing there would be a breath right after there, so you could get the rest of the phrasing for the word. Or if you're doing, again, what was another, how about, and as we wind on down the road, our shadows gone down and our souls. There's the breath mark. There's a lady we all know. Because you need a little bit of force to hit those crazy high notes, right? Oh, that's 2 Robert Plant references. I might need to listen to some Zeppelin later today. Actually, if anybody could put their favorite Led Zeppelin song in the comment section, it'd be groovy. Maybe it's a song I haven't heard by the Zepp. Well, it's good to hear you're doing good, Jeff. I'm glad. Hope everybody's New Year's doing well. I'm having a crazy beginning here. However, that's life. All right, here we go. This is our breath mark. The breath mark just means to breathe. There is no articulation here, because you're not really doing it for a note. You're doing it in betwixt a note. So if you ever see at the top of any of these a little colon like that, boom, that's a breath mark. Awesome. These are used an awful lot in beginning books to show you on like woodwinds, when to breathe. When you're doing something needing to play like a note structure. 1, 3, 5, 1. 1, 5, 3, 1. 2, 4, 6, 2. When doing something like this, you go through a lot of breaths. And it goes without mentioning, when you're doing this in a choral motif, or you're doing this learning something, read what your books are saying, but you will learn how to take longer, deeper breaths, and then maybe shorter breaths to affect the way that you sing. I've noticed after singing a lot, it's not as easy as you think to hit the high notes when you have a full breath. Sometimes you need a medium breath and push it out of your esophagus through the fuselage to get the kind of sound you're looking for. So the way, if you were doing something called an emulation, if you're trying to do Robert Plant again, doing those high notes, John Anderson, or, you know, you're trying to do like Les Claypool, there's a little spit in the back of the throat, yeah, and you do like a little country twang on the back end of it. Doing the Eastern tongue, like it relies on being able to also feel those. And when you hear that kind of articulation, you start seeing those notes in your head do to these. So after our breath mark, in between, the only thing that I could tell you about this next one is I hardly ever see it in the music that I play. However, it is called the grand pause. You will generally find this in the beginning or the end of a piece, at the end of something after you have already finished your cadence. This is called a censura, and it is marked by putting a double line sideways that extends through the top line. I'm not sure if it needs to extend past the second line, but I definitely know that it plays through the top line of any clef. That allows you to know that the S, not S, C-E-N, shura. C-E-N-S-U-R-A, censura. It's called the grand pause. It sometimes even is notated as a uppercase G and a P. I just don't put that because I've never really been able to find that on any of the writing programs I use, and I never remember it. I always use the censura. But as I said, there's not a lot of music that I listen to that does that, that even marks it. The censura is quite, I mean, I guess it would be like a diminuendo. A diminuendo, when we play a diminuendo, here, let me show you the D-I-M. You would put this kind of like the words. So a diminuendo and a crescendo are two forms of making the music gradually or exceedingly fast to a shortened verse where you would have something like an inflection of tone. So a diminuendo, oh my goodness, none of my pens work. Oh my goodness. There it is. D-I-M. You would see this written above your measure. Just like all these are right above the note, you would see dim written right above it in here, and you would know to use that diminuendo because the diminuendo indicate either a gradual increase or a gradual decrease. So the types of diminuendos that we use are called a crescendo. It is abbreviated by C-R-E-S-C with a dot. Now you'll find those in between brackets again up here when you're doing a note. And that lets you know to gradually get louder. Now, that looks kind of like this open alligator mouth, just like one of these, but the other way, just going huge, like we're getting greater than. And then the other one of these is called a decrescendo. My brain isn't working. Decrescendo. It's the same thing that you would put for the crescendo, except for now you're putting as a D for a decrescendo. Now, the decrescendo sign to gradually get louder would be crescendo. The decrescendo sign to gradually get softer, you could put diminuendo or you could put decrescendo. It's the same thing when you're thinking that, but to gradually get louder, you can't just put dim. You got to put it up. I kind of think of it like dimming the lights. Yeah, turning down the volume. The opposite of this is when we're going to get a little bit louder, we get a diminuendo or a decrescendo. They're both the same thing. You could put those in there as your articulation. And then the only other thing that I really wanted to talk about besides just these symbols right there, it's the opposite of course, is when we're talking about how to do these, we're talking about doing these within some sort of BPM. So the BPM means beats per minute. All of music is arranged into a counting of a tempo onto which you would have something like this. And when we count this, the invention of one of these things called a metronome allows us to feel the tempo. On the top of the metronome, on these old school ones, they have the markings that would say slow, grave. They would go all the way through to have like largo. Mine are all worn off because I'm used to pointing at them and touching them. But I remember them. Grave, largo, lento, adagio, allegretto, andante, andiando, what was it? The next one? Mirando, moderato, allegretto. As you can see, the slower ones, grave, super slow. That's what grave means. But when you get a little bit faster, like vivace, lively. Vivace means lively. So when we learn this, more lively than vivace, presto. That's why I think a lot of people know these words as being like presto, pretestissimo, pretestissimo. We can keep going with the metronome, but my metronome's a little funky. The idea between a metronome, it keeps that rhythm and it keeps it centered so you could subdivide beats. When practicing the practice of practicing, when using these, like we were talking about on any stringed instrument, I'm just going to grab the ukulele. If you could start playing your scales and hum. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. If you can start working with those 7 grouping of notes forwards and backwards, quite literally, physically learning them forwards and backwards, you can start singing different notes. If we sing the E, we're being able to express ourselves as singing the third, and then we hear the root or the prime moving along with us as a dyad. That's wonderful practice. Next step of doing that would be to put these types of movements in. Some of them would be silly, like the breath mark or the censura, but you most definitely can put the staccato in. So if you've been playing and you've never tried that, maybe the next time you're doing something like... and end the song just like a little staccato run. I don't know. Who knows? So after here, the last thing I want to talk about are a couple different variances of this. And everybody had this down here, I hope so. This reminds me of those old school boards from college when they would pull them down. There's stuff everywhere. Ooh. All right, so the next thing after the beats per minute, that's basically the how we feel out these rhythms and how we move through them. And lastly, that I want to talk about were those things. You could go all the way from a slow tempo all the way down to something like vivace. There's not really enough time in this video to talk about it, but we're talking about variances of BPM. So slow to fast. I would say be familiar with like 2 of each. So if you know that grave and largo are kind of slow, those are 2 good things to write into your music. Where do you write this? When you do it on your staff, you write it right in the first measure. So you would put like, how about like andante. Andante, once you write it enough times, you will realize that it's around 80 beats per minute. And because you are practicing the practice of practicing, knowing that your heart rate is about at 55 to 60 beats per minute, if you slowly speed that up, it gets about to 70 and then 80. This is andante. It's moderately moving, but it's not too fast-paced where you're moving and it feels like the notes are rushed or pushed. Alrighty. These are, that's a pretty good amount of information. If you stuck along with that the whole time and you understand all the words that came out of my mouth, awesome. If not, and you have any questions about any of these words, tenoro, censura, diminuendo, fortissimo, start slow, pick 1 word per day or 1 word concept, a vocabulary word per day, and then progress from there. I don't bet, but I'd wage that like after a week or 2, you'll start seeing the importance of starting to sing thirds or fourths or fifths above a note you're playing. You'll also see that the intervals between them help you to hear them, and if you don't have a good voice, work on it. If you do have a good voice, understand that you either have relative pitch or perfect pitch. If you have perfect pitch, good for you. For those of us who have relative pitch, working on these intervals will get you closer to your goal of sustaining notes, being able to use vibrato, and then articulating yourself with these along with your instrument. Thank you for being here today. This concludes our dynamics. Remember, if you like these live series and you enjoy hanging out and you actually enjoy the music theory nonsense behind here, go check out the other ones on the live playlist. Even timestamp them by putting in colons and then the time. So if it's something I said makes sense at like 3 minutes, put 3 minutes and blah, blah, blah. Right on. Anywho, I will be here on, Tuesday, tomorrow, to do another one of these. And it's going to be more, more on the line of musical theory concepts rather than just talking about dynamics. We're going to move through a couple different concepts, and everything is always music. I do appreciate people that pop out here to check out this crazy channel. And if you have any suggestions for the channel, put in there as well. I'd love to hear your feedback. Aloha, everybody have an awesome day.